Hello everyone, hope you're all safe and fine. So, today's topic of discussion will be testis. Testis is an important note which might be asked in your essay, of which the high yield topics are the development and descent of the testis, which finds importance in your short notes, clinical charts, and MCQs as well. So, let's try covering everything in detail now. So, before getting into the session, our objectives for today will be a basic introduction about the genital organs, the location of testis, shape and position, external features, the coverings and structure proper, the arterial supply, venous drainage, lymphatics and nerve supply, and mainly the development and descent of testis. So first, the male genital organs can be classified into external and internal. External is one which is visible, right? And internal which is found within the body cavities. So the external genital organ includes the penis and scrotum. And the internal organs include testis, epididymis, vas deferens, prostate, seminal vesicle and bulbourethral glands. So if you see in this picture, this is your testis, right? And this is the epididymis. You have three major parts in your epididymis, namely the head, body and tail. From the tail, it will continue as vas deferens, as here, and joins with the duct of the seminal vesicle. And this forms the common ejaculatory duct, which will go and join the prostatic part of the urethra. This one. This prostatic part of urethra. And this will continue as membranous and spongy urethra, which will find place in the penis. Penis will be a common pathway for both urine and semen and will play an important role in copulation. This is the scrotum, which is important holder of the testis and maintains the testicular temperature for proper spermatogenesis. And we know testis is the main site of production of the male gametes called the sperms and the male sex hormones, which are responsible for the development and maintenance of the secondary sexual characters. And this vas deferens, epididymis will be the reservoir, this one will be the reservoir and maturation and helps in the maturation of sperms. Going for the vas deferens, this will help in the transportation of the sperms. Prostate and seminal vesicles will find a role in the production of semen, which will help in the nourishment of the sperms. And finally, you have one more part, which is the bulbourethral glands. This will produce oily secretions for the lubrication of the urethra. So this was the basic intro about the male genital organs. So, getting into testis proper. We know testis is the male gonad, right, which secretes testosterone, and that is responsible for the development and maintenance of the secondary sexual characters, and they mainly produce the male gametes, which are spermatozoa, right? So going for the location of the testis will lie in the scrotum. So this is the scrotum. It will be 2 in number and they will be found in the scrotal sacs suspended by the spermatic cord. So what is this spermatic cord? So do you remember the root of lung, which I said will contain the structures which will enter and exit the lung. In the same way, spermatic cord is also a collection of structures that will pass to and fro from the testis and that will pass through the inguinal canal. So if you take the constituents of the spermatic cord, that mainly includes the vas deferens and three main arteries, namely the testicular artery arising from the abdominal aorta, cremasteric artery from the inferior epigastric artery, and artery to ductus deferens arising from the inferior vesical artery. Okay, so and then you have veins which are formed by the pampiniform plexus around the testis. We will see everything in the subsequent slides. Just understand the constituents now. Going for the lymphatics draining the testis, which will drain into the pre and para-aortic lymph nodes. And finally, you have nerves like genitofemoral nerve, and sympathetic fibers supplying the testis. Also, one of the main thing which is called the processus vaginalis. Okay, even this will be dealing at the end of this lecture. Okay, just understand the contents of spermatic cord now, and this spermatic cord will suspend the testis and make it lie in the scrotal sac. Okay, going for the shape and position of the testis. So basically it will be oval or ellipsoid in shape and appears to be compressed from side to side. Okay, and going for the position, it will not lie as straight as here. Okay, it will be obliquely placed. Okay, this is the upper pole of the testis and this is the lower pole. Where the upper pole will be bit forward and lateral, and lower pole will be backward and medial, kind of like this. So this will be the actual position of the testis within the scrotal sac. Also, there is one more important feature, which is the left testis will actually lie slightly at the lower level than the right one. This is the left one. So this will lie at a lower level than the right one. Why is this happening? This is because the left testis will begin its descent early compared to right one, and hence the left testis will have a longer spermatic cord compared to right, and this is why the position of the left will be a bit lower compared to the right. Okay, so this was about the position and shape of the testis. Yeah, about the external features, you have two poles, two borders and two surfaces. The two poles are the upper and the lower poles. These both are convex and appears smooth. Okay, the upper pole will provide attachment to the spermatic cord. So you'll have the spermatic cord somewhere over here. So it will be attached only to the upper pole. And you have two borders, namely the anterior border and the posterior border. The anterior border will be round and will be completely covered by tunica vaginalis. It is one of the coverings of the testis, which we will see in the next slide. Just understand that it will be completely covered by tunica vaginalis. Then what about the posterior border? You have epididymis, right, which is closely related to the posterior part of the testis, and hence the tunica vaginalis will not completely enclose. So it will enclose only on the front and the sides. Okay, this tunica vaginalis is nothing but the covering of the testis. Again, on the lateral aspect, the epididymis is separated from the testis by an extension of the cavity of tunica vaginalis, which is called this sinus of epididymis. So as I said, the tunica vaginalis, which is covering, will extend a bit between the testis and the epididymis, and you have a small space like thing, and that is called the sinus of epididymis. Okay, and you have two surfaces, namely the medial and the lateral surfaces, which are smooth and slightly convex. Yes, getting into the coverings of the testis. As I mentioned here, you have three main coverings from superficial to deep. So first one is the tunica vaginalis, which is the outermost one. This tunica vaginalis is like a serous sac, which represents the lower persistent portion of the processus vaginalis. What is this processus vaginalis? So we will deal with that during the descent of testis. Okay, it's nothing but a part of peritoneum only. So it will be like a serous sac into which the testis invaginates. Something like the pleural sac through which the lung buds invaginate, right? Similar to that, it is also a serous sac into which the testis will invaginate from behind, and hence the vaginalis will mold itself into an outer parietal layer and inner visceral layer. Okay, so this is how tunica vaginalis is actually formed. It will be like just a serous sac, but it will be invaginated by the testis from behind, and this will tend to mold the layer into, you see, outer parietal and inner visceral layer. Okay, and this is the outermost covering of the testis. So this will completely enclose the testis on front and sides. Why is this? As I said, the epididymis will lying over the testis directly at the posterior border, and hence this tunica vaginalis tend to extend only on the front and sides. So let's quickly see one of the clinical conditions related to this, which is called the hydrocele. What's hydrocele? It's nothing but the accumulation of fluid within the layers of the tunica vaginalis. It's a rare condition which will occur following inflammation of testis, and the cause is mostly idiopathic. How can you aspirate the fluid out? You can insert a fine trocarine cannula which will pass through the layers of the scrotal skin and can remove the excess fluid from the tool between the two layers. Okay, and this condition is called hydrocele, which is something rare. Going for the next layer, that's called tunica albuginea. This tunica albuginea is a thick, dense layer of fibrous tissue. See, this is tunica albuginea, which is this part. I'll change color. So this will be the tunica albuginea, which is found deep to the visceral layer of the tunica vaginalis. Okay, and this is, as I said, it's a thick, dense layer of fibrous tissue enclosing the testis, and this will be completely enclosing the testis, unlike the tunica vaginalis, right? So if you see, it will be covered by the visceral layer of tunica vaginalis, except where it is in direct contact with the epidermis. So this will be completely enclosing the testis, but this will be in turn covered by the vaginalis only in front and sides, because it will be in direct contact with the epidermis at the posterior border. So this is just a difference from the tunica vaginalis. Going for the tunica vasculosa, which is the innermost layer. It's a vascular layer, and this will line the lobules of the testis. Actually, the artery supplying the testis itself will form this layer, and that's why it's called vasculosa, something meaning the vessels. Okay, and this is the tunica vasculosa layer, this one. Okay, so there are three basic layers to remember. The outermost, which is the tunica vaginalis, which will enclose the testis on the front and sides except at the along the posterior border, and that is formed by the lower part of the processus vaginalis. Okay, and tunica albuginea is a fibrous tissue which is completely enclosing the testis, and it will be in turn covered by the vaginalis only in front and sides, because it lies in direct contact with the epidermis along the posterior border. Okay, and going for the tunica vasculosa, this will be the innermost layer which is lining the lobules of the testis and formed by the artery supplying the testis themselves. These are the facts about the coverings of the testis. So let's understand the structure of the testis. We know testis is enclosed in a fibrous capsule, which is the tunica albuginea. Okay, the tunica albuginea will be thickened along the posterior wall of the testis. See, it's not complete like surrounding it closely. It is like bit thicker compared to the anterior one. So this is the anterior, and this is the posterior, which is lying much away from the lobule. So they form a thick layer. And that is called the mediastinum testis. Okay, so the tunica albuginea will be thickened to form an incomplete vertical septum or ridge called the mediastinum testis. Numerous incomplete septa will tend to arise from the mediastinal testis to the inner aspect of the tunica albuginea. So these are the septa which arises from the thickened part, which is the mediastinum testis, to the anterior aspect of the tunica albuginea. So what does it do? This will divide the entire testis into numerous lobules. There will be around 200 to 300 lobules in each of the testis. Okay, so this septa, incomplete septa, will tend to divide the entire testis into numerous number of lobules. Okay, and these lobules will hold highly folded structures called the seminiferous tubules. And these seminiferous tubules will be lined by thick multi-layered germinal epithelium. And it's this wall which will produce the male gamete called the spermatozoa, and also they produce the male sex hormones. Okay, so this highly folded structure will continue now as straight tubule, and this straight tubule will have no role in production of spermatozoa. It will just continue and forms the channel called the retid testis. See here, and this will be found in the mediastinal testis themselves. The channels arising from this retitestis will what? Join to form the epididymis. As I said, you have three parts, which is the head part, the body part, and the tail part, which will then, as it is, continue as the vas deferens. So this was the structure and function of the testis. So let's see in detail about the arterial supply of the testis. So I have mentioned here, the main arterial supply comes from the testicular artery, which arises from the abdominal aorta at the level of L2 vertebrae. Okay, so the artery arising from the aorta will pass downward and laterally and enters the deep inguinal ring and travels through the inguinal canal. This is the deep inguinal ring and this is the inguinal canal. Okay, it will enter through the deep inguinal ring, transversing through the inguinal canal, and then reach out to the testis. On the posterior aspect of the testis, it will divide into number of small branches. Okay, and also they give two main branches called the medial and lateral ones. Why is it so specific? It is these branches which will penetrate or pierce through the tunica albuginea. Remember, it's the outermost covering, albuginea, and will ramify, which means branch out extensively and form the tunica vasculosa layer surrounding the surface of the lobules. As I said, it will form by the artery supplying the testis itself, and it is the branches of these testicular arteries. Okay, passing through the inguinal canal, reach the posterior border, divide into small branches supplying the testis, and two main branches, medial and lateral one, will ramify around the lobules to form the tunica vasculosa layer. Okay, so this is about the arterial supply of the testis. And one more is the venous drainage. So the veins draining the testis will form a plexus, and that plexus is called the pampiniform plexus of veins. As you see here, this will form a plexus. So this will form a numerous number of branches which are termed as the plexus. Okay, pampiniform plexus of veins. These plexus will reach out to the inguinal canal, to the superficial inguinal ring, where all the branches will join to form two main branches on each side, and at the deep inguinal ring they will fuse to form a single vein on either side. They call the left and right testicular veins. The right testicular vein will drain into the inferior vena cava, and this occurs at an oblique angle. And the left testicular vein will drain into the left renal vein rather than directly into inferior vena cava, and this will occur at right angle. So why is this important? Why should we know about the angles? So we have a really important clinical correlation related to this, which is called varicocele. Varicocele basically means the dilated, tortuous and elongated veins. Okay, and this occurs in the following conditions. So one is basically the left testicular vein tends to drain at a right angle to the left renal vein, right? So obviously there will be an increased venous pressure which will be experienced by the left vein compared to the right one. So if you see, both veins are draining against gravity. Okay, but it is more difficult for the left one because it has to drain at a right angle into the left renal vein, which will then direct into the inferior vena cava, and hence they always face a high pressure. Also, if the valves get disrupted, eventually you will have backflow of blood, and this will result in venous pooling at the pampiniform plexus, and this will appear as dilated, tortuous and elongated veins, which is called the varicocele. This is a normal physiological condition, draining at right angle, but if the valves become improper, they tend to allow the backflow of blood, which will result in pooling of blood in the pampiniform plexus and causes varicocele. The pathological condition is that there might be a blockage of entry of the testicular vein at the left renal vein, which may be due to growth of malignant tumors of the left kidney. So if you have any malignancy in the left kidney, so this might block the site of drainage of left testicular vein into the left renal vein, and this will even more worsen the condition, and this might also result in varicocele. Another normal condition is there can be compression of the left testicular vein by loaded or constipated sigmoid colon. Okay, so these three are the main conditions which can result in varicocele, and this can be seen in adolescents and young adults. So how will the patient present to you in case of this varicocele? There will be a vague dragging sensation and aching pain in the scrotum, and also you will find a bag of worms on palpation. This will be the main features of varicocele. Okay, and the clinician must be very keen, because in case of rapidly developing left-sided varicocele, if you have a sudden onset of left-sided varicocele, the clinician should always suspect tumor in the left kidney. Okay, so only because of this there might be a sudden in the sense rapid development of varicocele in your left vein. So that is an important aspect. And if the varicoceles recur, then you have to go for pampaniform venography. Okay, so this was the important condition related to veins. Going for the lymphatic drainage. So the lymphatics arising from the testis will drain into the pre and para-aortic group of lymph nodes, and this will be one of the components of the spermatic cord too, along with the testicular veins and arteries. So do you get a doubt like, why is the testis supplied or drained by all the structures related to abdomen? It's testicular artery arising from abdominal aorta, veins which is draining into inferior vena cava or left renal vein, and if you go for the lymphatics, it's into pre and para-aortic lymph nodes, which are again the abdominal lymph nodes. Why is that happening? This will see in the development, but just get that the testis actually begins to develop in the abdomen only, and it tends to descend down during birth, and that's why all the structures related to testis are coming from or going to the abdomen. Okay, we'll clear that during the development of testis. So finally, going for the nerve supply, the predominant one is a sympathetic nerve to the T10 segment, which supplies to the renal and the aortic plexus. So sympathetic fibers arising from the T10 segment, and they supply to the renal and aortic plexus. And sensory nerves will arise from L1, L2, which is the first and second lumbar nerves, and S2 to S4, second, third and fourth sacral nerves, through the iliogastric, ilioinguinal, genitofemoral and the pudendal nerves. So this was about the lymphatic drainage and nerve supply of the testis. Getting into this high yield topic, which is development of testis. Let's start from the beginning. We know all the tissues and organs, right, will develop from the three basic germ layers, namely the ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. So which of this will be related to the reproductive system? Is this mesoderm, of which you have three parts. One is the paraxial mesoderm, intermediate mesoderm and lateral plate mesoderm. Okay, and this is this intermediate mesoderm which will be condensed to form an important structure called the urogenital ridge. Okay, this will be forming the urogenital ridge, as you see here. It is this ridge which will give rise to the gonads, which is testis in male and ovary in case of female, and also the ductal systems, namely the mesonephric and the paramesonephric ducts. Okay, so this testis will tend to develop along the posterior wall of the abdominal cavity, along the medial side of the mesonephric duct at the level of T10 segment. If you take any structure of the testis, it can be the seminiferous tubules or straight tubules or retitestis, Leydig and the Sertoli cells. Everything tends to develop from this urogenital ridge. Except the spermatozoa. This is very important because the actual gametes do not come directly from the testis. So they are called the primordial germ cells, which are precursors of the gametes, and they tend to come from the wall of the yolk sac. If you see, this is your yolk sac, and this will be connected to your gut tube by a duct called Whitland tube, and this is called the Whitland tube. Okay, it is through this tube how the primordial germ cells, nothing but the spermatozoa, tend to migrate from the wall of the yolk sac, and through the hind gut they tend to infiltrate into the gonads formed from the genital ridge. So you have to just remember everything except this primordial germ cell, spermatozoa in male, okay, will come from the genital ridge. That is, spermatozoa only will arise from the yolk sac. Okay. So we saw gonads are formed from the urogenital ridge. But how are the gonads differentiated into testis or ovary? What is that factor which is signaling that a gonad should form a testis or the gonad should form an ovary? How is that happening? So we'll see it now. Basically, male 6 chromosomes are X and Y, and female ones are X and X, right? So this is an undifferentiated gonad which is yet to develop into a testis or ovary. If it's a male child, then this Y chromosome will have a gene called SRY gene. Remember this gene? SRY gene. And this codes for an important factor called TDF. What's that? Testis determining factor. You have Y chromosome which holds the SRY gene, and that codes for the testis determining factor. It is this factor which is signaling the gonad to actually differentiate into testis. So now the gonad has differentiated into testis. The two main cells in the testis are the Leydig and the Sertoli cells, right? Of which the Leydig cells will produce testosterone, and this testosterone will induce the development of Wolffian or the mesonephric duct, and that thereby forms the epididymis, seminal vesicles, vas deferens, and ejaculatory duct. Okay, and one more thing is this testosterone activated by 5-alpha reductase enzyme. 5-alpha reductase will form DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone, and this in turn tends to form the male genitalia. Okay, so what is this MIF? That's called Mullerian inhibitory factor, and that comes from the Leydig cells. The Sertoli cells. Okay, so Leydig cells will form testosterone, and that will have a role in the development of the Wolffian duct and the external genitalia. Okay, and the Sertoli cells will produce Mullerian inhibitory factor. We know the ductal system of the women is called the Mullerian duct, and this inhibitory factor tends to regress the Mullerian duct development, and thereby all the features of male reproductive system are achieved. Just an intro about detail about the development of female reproductive system will do good, right? So what is that determining the gonad to be the ovary? So in case of females, you have XX chromosome, right? And due to lack of Y chromosome, you don't have the SRY gene. There is no SRY gene, and thereby there is no TDF also, which is the testis determining factor. So there is no SRY gene and there is no testis determining factor, and hence due to lack of testosterone there will be regression of the Wolffian duct, which is the male ductal system, and due to lack of Mullerian inhibitory factor and also the presence of estrogen from the follicular cells, there will be differentiation and growth of fallopian tube, uterus, and upper 1/3 of vagina. So it is this TDF coming from the SRY gene of Y chromosome which is determining that this gonad should differentiate into a testis. And the important cells, namely the Leydig cell, will produce testosterone, which will induce the development of the Wolffian duct. Okay, and that forms the seminal vesicle, epididymis, vas deferens, and ejaculatory duct. Okay, and the Sertoli cells producing Mullerian inhibitory factor will regress the development of female ductal system, which is the Mullerian ductal system, and this is how the gonads differentiate into testis and all the features of the male reproductive system are achieved. Hope this was clear. Getting into one more high yield topic is the descent of testis. As I already mentioned, The testes will be basically formed in the abdominal wall, especially the posterior abdominal wall, right? But this is found in the scrotal sac in men. So there is something which is causing the descent of testes from the abdominal cavity into the scrotal sac. And why is this descent occurring? So, in order to spermatogenesis occur, the temperature should be 2 degrees Celsius around than the normal body temperature. Okay, because the normal body temperature, which is in the abdominal cavity, will be unsuited for spermatogenesis to occur. And this is why the main reason that the testis tends to descend from the abdominal cavity into the scrotal sac, where the temperature will be maintained around 2 degrees Celsius lower, and hence spermatogenesis can be favored. So this is the important reason why is it occurring. Let's see how this occurs. So basically, when the testis decides to descend, if the first thing occurring is the progression of processus vaginalis. So yeah, the thing which I have mentioned many times before. What is processus vaginalis? You see here, this is peritoneum actually. Okay. So when the testis decides to descend down, this peritoneum will tend to fold like this. See, will tend to fold and reaches the base of the scrotum. This is the first thing happening even before the descent of testis, and this is called the processus vaginalis. It's nothing but the fold of peritoneum which tends to progress down. Once the processus vaginalis has reached the bottom of the scrotum, you have a development of a fibromuscular band called the gubernaculum testis. It is this gubernaculum testis. It's a fibromuscular band which attaches the lower pole of the testis and the mesonephric duct together to the bottom of the scrotum. Okay, so first there is the progression of the processus vaginalis, which is nothing but the fold of peritoneum, followed by the attachment of gubernaculum testis, which is a fibromuscular band. Following this, there will be contraction of the gubernaculum testis, and also differential body growth will favor this. So there will be descent or dragging down of testis from the actual position in the abdominal cavity. So the testis tends to move down. Okay, and finally, once it has reached the desired position, this processus vaginalis will be molded by the descending testis into the two-layered tunica vaginalis, which is the covering, outermost covering. But there will be remnant which is still persisting, and that is called the remnant of processus vaginalis, which is a constituent of the spermatic cord. So this is how the testis tends to descend from the actual position in the abdominal cavity to the scrotum. First, there is formation of the processus vaginalis, which is the fold of peritoneum, followed by gubernaculum testis formation, which then contracts and tends to pull it down. On reaching the position, the processus vaginalis will be forming into tunica vaginalis. Okay, so this was about the process, how the descent occurs. So they'll have a timeline, a month-based timeline at which the descent occurs. So basically, the descent will begin by the second month of intrauterine life. Okay, so this actually is present in the abdominal cavity, and the testis will decide to descend by second month of intrauterine life. At third month, this will be reaching the iliac fossa somewhere over here. Okay, the iliac fossa. See, and around 4 to 6 months, the testis tend to rest at the deep inguinal ring. You know, inguinal canal has a superficial and deep inguinal rings, and this tends to rest over here for around 4 to 6 months. And then during 7th month, the testis tends to transverse through the inguinal canal. See, it will tend to transverse through the inguinal canal, and at 7th month, they transverse through the inguinal canal, and during 8th month, they will reach the superficial inguinal ring. And finally, at the end of 8th month or beginning of 9th month, they will reach the scrotum, and they lie high up in the scrotum. And at the end of 9th month or usually immediately after birth, they tend to reach the bottom of the scrotal sac. So this is the timeline by which the descent of testes occurs in the intrauterine life till birth. So let's see some of the factors which are actually inducing the descent of testes. As I already mentioned, there will be differential body growth of the embryo which is actually inducing the descent of testes. And one more was the contraction of gubernaculum, which is a fibromuscular band which is dragging testes from below, right? And the other important factors are the increased abdominal pressure and temperature, and hormones which can be the male sex hormones, and also the maternal gonadotropins which are inducing them. And finally you have CGRP, which is calcitonin gene related peptide. These are neurotransmitters produced by the genitofemoral nerve, and these are the factors which tend to cause the descent of testes from the abdominal cavity into the scrotal sac. So finally, let's end up with an important clinical correlation, which is cryptorchidism, and other one is ectopic testis. Cryptorchidism means incomplete descent of testis. So just by the name you can understand it's incomplete descent, which is the testis will follow a normal path but just fails to reach the base of the scrotum. Okay, and this is varying from the ectopic testis, is that ectopic testis is mild descent of testis, where the testis tends to obtain an abnormal pathway and thereby fails to reach the scrotal sac. In both the cases, there is failure of the testis to reach the scrotal sac. But in cryptorchidism, it will follow a normal pathway as the normal testis, but just fails to reach the sac. But in ectopic testis, it will follow an abnormal pathway and eventually get into some other part. Okay, so this cryptorchidism, it can be found in any of the abnormal positions. One is the abdomen. It can still lay within the abdomen, or it can lay at the deep inguinal ring, or within the inguinal canal, superficial inguinal ring, or high up in the scrotum. So see, this is the normal position, normal pathway which will be followed by the testis. But thing is that it just fails to reach the actual part. So it tends to be retained in the abdomen itself, or at the superficial inguinal ring, or within the inguinal canal, or even high in the scrotum. Okay, so what will be the complication of this cryptorchidism? One thing is the undescended testis may fail to produce spermatozoa, which is the most important function of the gonad, right? So it may fail to produce the spermatozoa. And one more condition is that this undescended testis can undergo malignant change. So it should be treated immediately. So going for the ectopic testis. Ectopic testis, as I said, is the mild descent of testis, which is following an abnormal pathway. They eventually tend to reach an abnormal site rather than the actual scrotal sac, right? And in this case, they can be found in the superficial fascia of the lower part of anterior abdominal wall, or they can be found in front of pubis. In front of pubis, or they can be found somewhere in the perineum, or finally they can be found in front of thigh too. So over here, or in front of thigh. So these are the abnormal sites at which an ectopic testis can be found. Okay, and it is highly important that the undescended or maldescended testis should be retained to normal position before puberty. An ectopic testis which develops are normally susceptible to trauma too, and hence they should be placed in position by surgical procedures. Okay, so this was everything about testis. Hope the topic was clear for you guys. So try going through the development and descent, which are the high yield topics, as I said. They're very important. You can get MCQs, you can get the clinical charts from this topic, or short notes, anything on any basis, and mainly they focus on the development and descent only. Okay, so on a general note, it's a high time, guys, so stay safe, get vaccinated, take care of yourself and your family members. So until then, See you, take care, and bye.